Hi, I'm Gail Bannock.
And I'm Alana Santone. Welcome to the She Means Business podcast. Throughout our careers, we faced countless questions and sought advice from other women we respect and admire. And that's exactly what this show is about.
Each week, we aim to help you achieve your goals by sharing our experiences and talking with successful leaders, offering real stories, practical advice, and actionable takeaways for women who mean business. All right, let's do this. Hey everyone, welcome to today's episode of She Means Business. I'm thrilled to introduce today's guest, Kelly Pigeon. Kelly is the Vice President of E-commerce Platforms at Go TRG and the founder and CEO of Epiphany, a company dedicated to empowering women by enhancing their sexual pleasure. Very cool. Kelly is a serial entrepreneur and has navigated the corporate world brilliantly. Before embarking on her journey with Epiphany, Kelly founded Dressed, similar to Rent the Runway, as well as Looped, where we initially met. Welcome to the show, Kelly.
Thank you.
So good to have you here.
So good to be here.
Kelly, I am so impressed with your resilience, and I want to talk about that today. But before we get into some of the struggles that you've had, as well as how you've overcome them, can you take us through your background and professional journey?
Sure. So I professionally grew up at Johnson & Johnson. I was there for almost 10 years, leading local brands here in Canada, everything from Neutrogena to Nicorette, and then took on a global role where I was living in New York, leading a Band-Aid brand, figuring out which new markets we should enter, what could that brand become in 5 to 10 years from now. And honestly, it was my dream job. But I was commuting back and forth between New York and Toronto every weekend because my husband lived here, and that just was not a good life. So made the move back to Toronto, decided to go headfirst into startup land, launched Dressed, like you said, very similar to Rent the Runway, more focused on their everyday clothing as a subscription. And it had pretty incredible demand right off the hop. And we built it in like the hackiest way we could possibly find to just get it in the market and see what the response looks like. So we built it on Shopify. And back in 2018, Shopify was not built for like returns, and it was not built for subscriptions very well. And so we were actually tracking like who has what clothes using Excel. And when you're doing like several hundred orders, each with several items in it, it gets really complicated. Who has what? When's it coming back? Who's late? All those details. And so we realized, okay, we need to build software for our use because one does not exist. And so we added a technical co-founder to our team, and we built a software for our own use. So let's make returns one scan, not 20 clicks. Let's track the life story of every item. What's its depreciation? And so what should the buy now price be at the end of a rental? And once we built the software, we sort of said to ourselves, like, hang on a second, this software is a way bigger idea than our little clothing rental shop. And so we did a full pivot. And by the way, right around COVID when people were not going out. So it ended up being a pretty timely decision. But we'd made that even before COVID really hit. And so we sunset Dressed and went all in on this software. We raised some venture capital. We raised a couple $1 million. We joined Google's accelerator to get really smart about which features we prioritize, how we approach enterprise selling. Because now we're like knocking on IKEA's door to say, hey, students are buying your stuff and they're using it for 8 months. Like, could you imagine a world where they're subscribing to their dorm room, sending it back, and then another student subscribes and everybody wins. The environment wins. The student pays less. You end up making more money per piece of furniture in the long term, and so on. There's so many different items that have a sort of a similar application. And it was really cool. We were, I think, on the cusp of something really big, but we just weren't able to. I mean, there's a few crazy twists and turns that got thrown at us, but we weren't able to reach profitability or raise more money before we were able to get like really meaningful traction. And so we had
and this was Looped, right?
This was Looped, exactly. That's what we called the tech platform that we initially built for Dressed. Looped was meant to be sort of a nod to Dressed. So yeah, we ended up ended up not being able to make a go of that business. And I've been working with this other company also in the circular economy called Go TRG. And Epiphany is all about empowering women to enjoy their sexuality sort of to the max. There's this huge gap between men and women in heterosexual relationships in terms of who gets pleasure. So if you measure pleasure by who is orgasming, men are orgasming like 95% of the time, and women come to climax like 65% of the time. And so I was very specifically looking for some place of inequality to try and address. And I thought this one would be really fun. And our first product is a clitoral arousal serum. And it is what it sounds like. It's a serum for your clit. You just put like a pea-size amount on your finger or whatever body part or thing you'd like to put it on. You rub it in and it makes that touch just so much more potent. And it also like brings women's pleasure center to like the forefront of sex, which has a very standard script in hetero relationships that's all about penetration, which for 96% of women is not doing it.
I don't even know where to go from that in terms of like of all
Where
the places.
do you go from that, Elena?
I don't know. It's one of those things that the first question is, so of all the places that you could bring inequality to equality, how did you land on that?
So honestly, I had started thinking more around menopause because I know that's such an underserved space. But the thing is, like, I haven't reached menopause myself. I don't know what a better mousetrap would look like. I don't know like what a great product would be that would solve some of the challenges that you go through with menopause. And I was familiar with this category of clit arousal serums from my days at J&J when they had KY.
Right.
And I had tried this KY product like 10 years ago, maybe more than 10 years ago. And it was like, it's such a little SKU that nobody promotes or talks about, but it's in their portfolio. I have a friend who I was sitting beside sort of introduced it to me, and I tried it and it like changed my sex life. Like it was like, I was asleep and now I'm awake, and found that there's like this whole category. There's a bunch of brands that have these arousal serums, and some are pretty good, some are not so good. But we spent like a year trying to make the best one on the market. And I really think like, and I'll be really real with you. I at first, when I briefed our chemist, I said, if you can make one as good as this KY one, I'm happy. We made one that's better. Like, I swear to God, I know I'm tooting my own horn, but like, it's really, really lovely.
Well, I was going to say, because it actually was, as I listened to you and your career, what's really interesting, and you just hit on it, so I'm going to ask you to comment on it a little bit, is you're taking experiences. So first of all, you've had a career of kind of real success, and then I would imagine maybe heartbreak isn't the right word, but I mean,
no,
sunset your own company is a little bit of like as a bit of heartbreak that you're kind of like, you know,
the hardest thing I've ever done by a lot.
Okay, so there you go.
Yeah.
So you're filling in my words, and so then you just touched on your experience at J&J and how it helped you kind of start Epiphany. Yeah. or gave you the idea for Epiphany. I wondered if you could talk a little bit about how you have leveraged the learnings you've had through your career to get you to the point you're at now. You kind of use the example of the product itself, but how about from a leadership or a thought perspective in terms of how you bring it to what you do?
Honestly, it's almost cliche. You learn so much more from failure than you do from your success. And I got some real battle scars from my time at Looped. And with all the heartbreak that came with shutting down Looped, a lot of people have asked, like, why would you jump back into the fire? Like, entrepreneurship is really hard. It can really be heartbreaking after such a tough experience. Why would you jump back in? But it is because I learned so much. And had I not applied it, all that pain would be for nothing. So I think one of the biggest learnings, for example, is around, and this is maybe less skill-based and more very specific tactical, but is around when you take outside funding. So with Dressed, when I initially launched Dressed, no day job. I'm all in on this day one. I want to go raise outside money so that I can make a living even before we've proven product market fit or anything. And then we were in Dressed and we wanted to do Looped, and I'm not a technical person. I can't build a tech platform. And so we're going to need to hire some people. We got to go take more outside money. And all of that outside money, it steered us in a really strange direction. It made the power dynamic really not a powerful place for me to be sitting personally. And I wanted more control over my own destiny. That's one of the reasons I wanted to be an entrepreneur. And taking outside money takes that away to some extent. You're hiring, not your boss, but you're hiring people who are going to impact where this business goes. I don't think I did that in the right way or at the right time. And so with this business, I am doing it as a side hustle and I am bootstrapping it. And I am finding kind of creative ways of bringing on more expensive third parties that you need to make it amazing.
Going back to, you've made a lot of pivots. So, you mentioned, okay, you were at Johnson & Johnson, traveling back and forth. It was a lot. That makes total sense. Anybody with a commute can understand.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, any regrets on that decision? Leaving Johnson & Johnson, leaving the corporate world?
Sometimes. There are some days, honestly, because the thing is that global job was a dream job. I really, really loved it. I loved the people I worked with, but you are very much a cog in the machine. And I really see entrepreneurship as one of the clearest ways of like driving change in the world. And I can't stand too high on my soapbox because I know I make a clit serum, but I really see an opportunity to change the dynamic in the way women sort of see their sexuality and see their power and demanding what they need from their partner. And so I'm grounded in the fact that I'm more excited about the vision I have now than I have ever been about anything I've done corporately.
Okay. And then what about, so I know COVID happened, but any regrets on pivoting away from dress? Because it sounds like it was going well. It's just that you identified Loop being a bigger opportunity. Any regrets on that?
Honestly, the unit economics of dressed were really challenging. It took, I can't remember exactly, I want to say like 15 to 20 wears for a piece to become profitable. And you typically get like 30, 35 wears from an item. So that's great, except we have 4 seasons. So those 20 months are not consecutive. You have a bunch of sizes and styles, and some of them are rented out a lot, and some of them are rented out not that much at all. And by the way, when you're more than 20% sold out at any given time, customers get pissed.
Yeah, and you might as well be sold out.
Yeah, exactly. And so 80% of your inventory is just sitting there collecting dust most months. So it's a really challenging business.
So that sounds like a no.
Profitable. Yeah, I don't regret it. I don't regret it.
It's so interesting because, I feel like I have 100 business ideas and a day, and I can talk myself out of all of them. I always know why it can't work out. I'm so envious of young entrepreneurs that when you listen to these success stories of like Uber and Airbnb, and everybody had no money and they were 12 years old and they had this idea and they just did it. And I'm like, I'm so jealous because now I feel like I know too much and I can talk myself out of anything. So how, similar to to Alana's question, okay, so you survived not one, but 2, these, traumatic events of businesses that are needing to pivot or sunset.
Yeah.
And I fully appreciate the go again attitude of, it's like having kids. You need an ROI to improve your ROI, but the more you have. But how do you muster up the strength to go again? Because it seems like really hard to do it once, let alone go again, third time.
But like, if you don't, then it's all for naught. You've gone through all this trauma and you've gained all these scars that taught you so much. And like, I don't know, you often hear the question like, okay, if you could go back to when you were 20 and give advice to that person, what would you tell them? But like with this, you can go back to the beginning. You can go back to a day one entrepreneur and live that advice. And I feel like I learned some really hard lessons and I want to go and live them. I think I get it now. I don't think I got it before. I think I get it now.
Okay. So what advice do you give your younger self?
In terms of entrepreneurship or like the 20-year-old?
Yeah. Well, yeah. Let's say, what are the 2 or 3 things that you are taking with you? You mentioned before, don't raise money.
Yeah.
What else?
It is all about the people that you bring in the boat with you. If you don't have the right people, It doesn't matter how good your strategy is. It doesn't matter how good your execution is. Well, actually, neither of those will be right if you don't have the right people. It will all go sideways if you don't have the right crew. And so I've been really choiceful about who I bring in and how I bring them in. And can I tear it back down if it goes sideways? Because it was impossible to tear the last one down without imploding the business. Like, you need to be connecting with like folks like you two or other like retailers or agencies. Like you need folks to work with. It's just how you bring them in and how you work with them.
Talk a little bit about that. I was going to ask a little bit about mentorship and network, because I think you're talking about people you bring into the business, like people who are going to do work for you.
Yeah.
But I imagine being an entrepreneur is relatively lonely unless you have a group of people that you talk to or a network that you have in your network, a network of people. Who are the people that you have in your network, or how did you acquire people as you went through that were truth tellers or advisors, or do you have that type of network?
I would say I do. I think there are some really romantic parts of a startup, and one of those is other startup founders. Like, if your mind is cloudy, if you are doubting yourself, other startup founders know what to say. Like, they know when to give you the real. They know when, like, how to pick you up on the right things, how to connect you. I have found that people who have also started a business have just an incredible amount of generosity with their networks. And I really try to walk that talk also and be generous with my network. It's tricky to replicate the way I've done it in particular, because I don't often find those more institutional sort of networking or incubators as helpful. It has to be sort of through your network, friend of a friend, ways in for it to be really productive in my experience. And it's just a matter of like chemistry and who you connect with and whose advice resonates with you. So it is just about getting out there, never shutting down the opportunity to have a conversation, and finding your tribe.
What's next for Epiphany? Or what's your dream for Epiphany, more importantly?
Yeah, I mean, I would love to see, here's my dream of dreams, is if women's pleasure is as important as men's pleasure in the bedroom. Because not only are women not getting as much pleasure, nobody is focused on it. Like
Nobody.
Like, the man is interested in how much pleasure he's getting, and the woman is interested in how much she is delivering pleasure to her man. And I just feel like there's an opportunity to totally shift the culture. So if my little arousal serum was on nightstands around North America and around the world, and other products down the line someday, I would love to be on the forefront of that change. And I feel like Gen Z has done such a nice job of like flipping the script on when and how to have those conversations around like what pleases you. Like, I remember I was talking to one of my agency partners, and I was describing like, who is this product for? I said, okay, well, so they're probably more urban. They're more comfortable with talking about their sexuality. Maybe they've been in a relationship for some time that they feel comfortable asking for what they want. And she's like, oh yeah, like on the first date. I was like, oh yeah, actually, yeah, it should be on the first date immediately. But it just strikes me that they have so much more confidence and no fear of talking about these kinds of subjects.
So you're talking about a movement, not just a product.
That's right. Exactly.
It's exciting. It's a purpose. You have a purpose, and it's exciting.
100%.
What's been the hardest thing so far with Epiphany? Your biggest challenge?
So as much as the culture has moved forward so that it doesn't feel like it's the taboo that it once was, institutionally, it is so taboo. So Meta, for example, cannot advertise. The product itself is considered inappropriate. And where they draw the line, it's not in sexual health, it's in pleasure. So if you have erectile dysfunction, no problemo, advertise like crazy. Pleasure? Nope, can't say the word. And that's just...
What if you can't reach an orgasm without it? That sounds like a problem.
Well, if you're a man, no problem, we'll advertise to you because that's erectile dysfunction. But if you're a woman, no. No.
Right. Well, it's not as important.
Yeah, it does feel like that institutionally still. And even how the wellness space has responded to this. So we are too spicy for most wellness influencers, retail shops. And I haven't been a retailer selling this, so I don't know what the backlash or the sort of loud minority sounds like, but it just feels like the culture is in one place and the institutions are in another.
And what advice would you give younger people mid-career who are thinking, okay, I'm done with corporate life, want to start a business? What advice would you give them based on your experience?
Number one is don't quit your day job. So like you've got to get your new business up and running to the point where you can rely on it for your income before you fully switch over. And I think number two would be dream really big. So don't just take a small swing and try and, I don't know, launch a product in a certain geography or like just in Canada or this smaller thing. Like take a really big swing. Dream as big as you can possibly dream and like swing for that.
I love that, Kelly. I feel like you walk the walk and not just talk the talk. So it's just incredibly inspiring. I want to give you a chance for a shameless plug. Where does one find Epiphany?
You can find it on tryepiphany.com. You can find it on Amazon. You can find it in Health Hut, Fuzz Wax Bar, and on Kindra.
Terrific. Amazing. Thank you so much, Kelly. It's been very educational, hopefully we can learn from your mistakes as well, and our listeners can as well. Thank you so much for being here. And I think everybody should go and check out tryepiphany.com.
Yeah, it was great to have you, Kelly.
Thank you, guys.
She was great. She's so impressive. I right from the moment I met her, I was very impressed with Kelly. She's got a lot of energy behind her.
Oh, and lots to learn from her story too. I love the way she reflects on that heartbreak of the failure. But then the need, like you really see it from entrepreneurs, this need to succeed almost.
Well, yeah, she's like, well, what was it for? What was it all for if I don't do it again?
And I think there's something there because
it's a sunk cost.
Yeah. But I think there's something there for everyone, right? Because I think I see it in more, my 19-year-old, but I also see it in like people who are just starting off in their careers or, who are trying to get to that next level or trying to move somewhere and they see it as, oh, I didn't make it. I failed. Like, and you're kind of beaten down, and that ability to get back up wherever you are and say, oh no, I'm going to succeed. What's it all for if I don't hit my goal?
Right. I loved the way that she was so open to pivoting. Yeah. And, because I feel like as much as entrepreneurs are passionate about the business that they're in, they use the same energy to then redirect.
Yes.
And it's funny, I found that with buyers on my team.
I was just going to say that.
Yeah, I was always so impressed with the commitment that they have to the category that they are responsible for. And then the minute you tell them they're on a different business, they instantly lose complete interest and they have the same amount of energy for this new category.
I was going to say that.
Dead to me.
I was going to say that. And those are like the core buyers. And then you meet some people that are like, oh, well, I could never buy that. I'm not passionate about it. And I'm like, most of the really hardcore buyers I've met can actually pivot to any product. It really doesn't, it's not about the passion, big P, like what I do in my social life. It's passion of like, I'm passionate about buying and learning and curious. And I'm going in.
And you're like, this is my passion now.
Yes.
I've decided.
Yes, exactly.
I love it.
I love that too. And I think this, I think you said early on the podcast about resilience. And I think you need to have a certain resilience to be a serial entrepreneur and to find that thing that's going to work, because it's very, even I think you refer to Facebook and all the young entrepreneurs, but at the end of the day, a lot of them started and didn't end up where they started. Yeah. And it's that ability to pivot through that process to get to the product and to refine it. And that's really about, how you work kind of in a more agile way to get to your outcome versus kind of being so focused that you can't pivot.
I completely agree. I think you have to be open to pivoting, because otherwise you could just drive yourself into the ground. I think I listened to this podcast called How I Built This, And it's a great podcast for hearing the stories behind, Airbnb and all of that. And I would say, I can't think of one example where the business ended where it started. Even Airbnb, it was not supposed to be what it is today. You have to pivot. And I think full circle, I think that's true of any career.
Exactly.
I know I'm not where, I'm not where I thought I was going to be. Totally. And I doubt I'll die where I am today. I hope not.
Well, and in this age where everything is changing so fast, it's almost impossible to know where you're going to be. And so that
especially
ability,
with AI coming in. Exactly.
So I think that ability to pivot. So great story on pivoting, on resilience, on, I think it's that failing, but the need to succeed. There are lots to take away from this one.
Absolutely. That was great. Thanks.
Great. Thanks.
Thanks for listening to this episode of She Means Business. If you enjoyed today's show, please subscribe, rate, and review us wherever you listen to podcasts. And head over to our show notes where you can find helpful links and summaries of key points from the episode. We'd also love to hear from you on LinkedIn or Instagram, so please follow and DM us at the She Means Business podcast. See you next time.